Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. Introduction. One spring day, during his junior year of college, a young man named Tiago Forte began to feel a small, persistent pain in the back of his throat. He thought, as any of us would, that it was just the start of a cold. But it didn't go away. In fact, over the next few months, it slowly got worse. Doctors were stumped. They ran tests, they scanned him, they looked him over, and they all came back with the same conclusion: there was nothing wrong with him. But the pain was real. It grew so severe that speaking became difficult. Swallowing was a chore. Even laughing was a source of agony. Months turned into years. Hope began to fade. He was eventually put on a powerful medication that brought some relief, but at a terrible cost. It came with severe short-term memory loss. Entire trips he took, books he read, precious moments with people he loved, they were just gone. Wiped clean from his memory as if they had never happened. He was a 24-year-old man with the mind, as he put it, of an 80-year-old. And then one day, sitting in yet another doctor's office, waiting for yet another appointment that would likely lead nowhere, he had an epiphany. He realized he was at a crossroads. He could either continue to be a passenger in his own health journey, shuttled from one expert to another, or he could take responsibility. He could become the project manager of his own condition. He took out a journal and, for the first time, began to write down his own story, in his own words. He wrote down what worked and what didn't, what he was willing to sacrifice, and what he wasn't. He then walked up to the receptionist and asked for his entire patient record, hundreds of pages of medical jargon and test results. He took them home and began scanning every single page into his computer, turning that mountain of paper into a searchable, digital collection. With all this information in one place, something incredible began to happen. Patterns started to emerge. He started to see connections that no single doctor had been able to see. He realized his condition wasn't an illness to be cured with a pill, but a functional issue that required changes in how he lived. He took notes on everything he was learning, about breathing, nutrition, vocal habits, and he devised his own experiments. And slowly, miraculously, it started to work. The pain didn't vanish, but it became manageable. And he realized that his notes were just as important as any medicine. They allowed him to turn information into practical solutions. This experience set Tiago Forte on a path that would change his life, and the lives of thousands of others. He had stumbled upon a system, not just for managing medical records, but for managing all the information in our lives. He called it Building a Second Brain. This book has become a phenomenon, a guiding light for anyone feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information in our modern world. It promises to give you a proven method to organize your digital life and, in doing so, unlock your creative potential. What we're going to explore today is not just another productivity system. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to information. By the end of our time together, you'll understand how to build your own second brain, a trusted, external system for remembering everything that matters, so your biological brain can be free to do what it does best, to have ideas, to dream, and to create. This isn't about becoming a machine. It's about using machines to become more human. Book summary. Have you ever had a brilliant idea in the shower, only for it to evaporate by the time you've dried off? Or maybe you're in a conversation and you know there's a perfect fact or story you once read that would make your point, but you just can't recall it. We've all been there. We read books, listen to podcasts, watch videos. We are consuming more information than any generation in human history. One study estimated we consume the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of content every single day. But what do we have to show for it? How many of those great ideas have faded before we could ever put them into practice? The author, Tiago Forte, calls this modern dilemma information exhaustion. It's the constant, low-grade anxiety that comes from trying to hold everything in our heads. We're trying to use a brain that evolved on the plains of Africa 200,000 years ago to manage the complexities of the 21st century. And it's just not built for the job. Our minds, as productivity expert David Allen says, are for having ideas, not holding them. This is where the concept of a second brain comes in. A second brain is a digital archive of your most valuable memories, ideas, and knowledge. Think of it as a personal library in your pocket, a digital commonplace book, or an external brain that remembers everything for you so you don't have to. It's a trusted place outside your head where you can store and cultivate your knowledge over a lifetime. This isn't actually a new idea. For centuries, great thinkers and creators, people like Leonardo da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, and Taylor Swift, have used some version of this. They kept what were called commonplace books. These weren't just diaries. They were personal encyclopedias of quotes, ideas, sketches, and observations that they found interesting. It was a tool they used to make sense of the world and to fuel their own creative work. Taylor Swift does this today with the Notes app on her phone, jotting down lyrics and song ideas as they come to her throughout the day. What Tiago Forte has done is create a system to supercharge this timeless practice for the digital age. He gives us a simple, 4-step method called CODE. It's an acronym for capture, organize, distill, and express. This is the heart of the entire system, a map for navigating the endless flow of information. Let's walk through it, step by step. The first step is capture. Keep what resonates. Imagine you're a curator of a world-class museum. You wouldn't let just any old painting hang on your walls, would you? You'd be incredibly selective. You'd choose only the pieces that are truly noteworthy, the ones that inspire you, move you, and teach you something. This is the mindset we need to adopt with information. We can't save everything. If you try, you'll just end up creating a digital junk drawer that's just as overwhelming as the internet itself. The goal is not to become a digital hoarder, but a knowledge curator. So, what should you capture? The rule is simple: keep what resonates. When you're reading an article or listening to a podcast and a certain idea makes your eyes widen, or your heart skip a beat, that's resonance. It's your intuition telling you, hey, pay attention to this. This is important. You don't even need to know why it's important yet. Just trust that feeling. That's the signal to capture it. What does this look like in practice? It could be insightful passages from books you read, memorable quotes from podcasts, photos or images that inspire you, notes from a meeting, even your own shower thoughts or random musings. You can use a variety of tools for this. Most people use a central digital note-taking app like Evernote, Notion, or Apple Notes as the hub of their second brain. But you can also use read-later apps, web clippers, or even voice memo apps that transcribe your speech into text. The key is to make capturing as frictionless as possible. It should only take a couple of clicks or taps to save an idea before it disappears. To help guide your capturing, the author shares a brilliant strategy from the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. Feynman kept a list of what he called his 12 favorite problems, a dozen open-ended questions that he was constantly thinking about. These weren't problems he could solve in an afternoon. They were grand, sweeping questions like, how can we make society more equitable? Or personal ones like, how can I spend more of my time doing high-value work? Whenever Feynman encountered a new idea, he would test it against his 12 problems to see if it shed any new light. This gave him a filter. It turned passive consumption into an active search for answers. By identifying your own favorite problems, you start to build a collection of knowledge that is uniquely tailored to the questions that drive your life. Once you start capturing what resonates, you'll soon face a new problem. What do you do with all of it? This brings us to the second step of the code method: organize, save for actionability. This is where almost everyone gets stuck. Our instinct, learned from school and libraries, is to organize information by subject. We create folders for psychology, business, history, and so on. But Tiago argues this is precisely the wrong approach for personal knowledge. Think about it. When you're in the middle of a busy workday, are you really going to browse through a massive psychology folder to find that one useful insight you saved 6 months ago? Of course not. That folder is an idea graveyard, where information goes to be forgotten. The secret is not to organize your notes by what they are, but by what they are for. The best way to organize your notes is for action. You should always be asking yourself one simple question: how is this going to help me move forward with one of my current projects? This insight led the author to create a beautifully simple organizing system called PARA. Like code, it's an acronym. It stands for the 4 universal categories that can hold every single piece of information in your life: projects, areas, resources, and archives. Let's break that down. First, you have projects. These are the short-term efforts you're actively working on right now. They have a clear goal and a deadline. Things like finish web page design, plan family vacation, or publish blog post. This is the most active and important category. Second, you have areas. These are the long-term responsibilities you have to manage over time. Unlike projects, they don't have an end date. Think of things like health, finances, family, or at work, product development. You're not trying to finish your finances, you're trying to maintain a certain standard. This is where you keep the information related to those ongoing parts of your life. Third, you have resources. This is a catch-all for topics or interests that might be useful in the future, but aren't tied to a specific project or area right now. This is where you might have folders for habit formation, classic movies, or interior design. It's like your personal reference library. Finally, you have archives. This is where you put anything from the other 3 categories that is no longer active. Completed projects, areas you're no longer responsible for, resources you're no longer interested in. You move them here to get them out of your way, but you never delete them. In the digital world, storage is practically free, and you never know when an old project might become useful again. Think of it like organizing a kitchen. Your projects are the pots and pans on the stove right now, the meal you're actively cooking. Your areas are the items in the fridge, things you plan to use soon and need to check on regularly. Your resources are the pantry, ingredients you can pull from for any meal, but are neatly tucked away. And your archives are the deep freezer, for long-term storage, out of sight but available when needed. You wouldn't organize your kitchen by food group, putting the frozen fruit next to the fresh fruit and the dried fruit. That would be absurd. You organize it based on when and how you're going to use the food. The PARA system applies that same practical, action-oriented logic to your digital life. Now you have a system for capturing ideas and organizing them for action. But there's a missing piece. Just saving information isn't enough. Your notes can still be long and dense. How do you make them instantly useful for your busy, impatient future self? This brings us to the third step: distill. Find the essence. Imagine you're the legendary film director Francis Ford Coppola, and you've just been hired to make a movie called The Godfather. It's based on a long, sprawling novel with dozens of characters and subplots. How do you even begin to turn that into a focused, powerful film? Coppola had a technique. He took a 3-ring binder, tore the pages out of the novel, and pasted them inside. This became his prompt book. As he read, he would add his own notes in the margins, highlight key passages, and, most importantly, he would try to distill the essence of each scene into a sentence. This notebook, not the script, became the core asset he used to direct one of the greatest films of all time. We need to do the same with our notes. We need to find their essence. The technique Tiago Forte teaches for this is called progressive summarization. It sounds fancy, but it's based on something you already know how to do: highlighting. But it's highlighting with a twist. You do it in layers. Here's how it works. Let's say you've captured some excerpts from an interesting article. Layer 1 is the original note itself, the raw material you captured. Layer 2, at some later point, when you revisit the note, you read it over and bold the most important sentences, the key phrases that jump out at you. Layer 3, later still, maybe when you're starting a project and using this note as a source, you read through only the bolded parts and you highlight the absolute best of the best. The one or two sentences that contain the core message of the entire note. Layer 4 optional. For the most important notes, the ones you return to again and again, you can add an executive summary at the top in your own words. Just a few bullet points that capture the main takeaways. Each layer makes the note more discoverable. It allows you to get the gist of it in seconds, without having to reread the whole thing. You can zoom in and out of your knowledge, getting the high-level summary or diving into the details as needed. This isn't about creating extra work. You don't summarize every note right away. You only distill a note when you handle it, when you move it to a project folder, or when you're actively using it. It's a just-in-time process. This brings us to the final, and most important, step of the code method. The whole point of building a second brain isn't just to have a perfectly organized collection of knowledge. It's to use that knowledge. This is step 4. Express. Show your work. Knowledge only becomes truly valuable when we put it to use, when we apply it to create something new and share it with others. But so often, we fall into the trap of endless preparation. We think, I just need to read one more book, or I'm not quite ready yet. The author gives us the powerful story of Octavia Butler. Butler grew up as a painfully shy and introverted girl, facing poverty and dyslexia. But she had a dream of becoming a science fiction writer. So she created a system. She never left home without a notebook. She meticulously captured facts, ideas, and observations from libraries, from the news, from her own life experiences. She drew on this vast collection of notes to build the rich, authentic worlds her stories took place in, eventually becoming one of the most influential writers of her generation. She didn't wait until she felt ready. She started creating with what she had. This is the essence of the express step. It's about taking the knowledge-building blocks you've been collecting and assembling them into something new. A key concept here is the idea of intermediate packets. Instead of thinking about your work as one giant, intimidating final product, like write a book, you break it down into small, concrete, reusable components. An intermediate packet could be anything. A set of highlights from a book. A brainstormed list of ideas. A slide deck from a presentation. Even an email you wrote answering a common question. These are your intellectual assets. Each one is a small building block. When you start a new project, you don't have to face a terrifying blank page. Instead, you can start by assembling the intermediate packets you've already created. Author Stephen Johnson calls this the archipelago of ideas. Your project starts not as a blank sea, but as a chain of islands, quotes, notes, and ideas that you've already collected. Your only job is to build the bridges between them. When you start to see your work this way, everything changes. Big projects become less intimidating. You can make progress in the small gaps of your day. And you start to realize you already have most of what you need to get started. So how do you find these intermediate packets when you need them? There are 4 retrieval methods. 1. Search. The search function in your Notes app is your best friend. It's fast and powerful. 2. Browsing. By using the para system, you can simply browse the folder for the project you're working on, knowing everything in there is relevant. 3. Tags. Tags are like labels you can add to notes to create connections across folders, helping you see themes and patterns. 4. Serendipity. This is the magic. By keeping all your diverse ideas in one place, you create the conditions for unexpected connections to emerge. An idea from a biology book suddenly sparks an insight for your marketing plan. Building a second brain isn't a one-time project. It's a set of habits that you integrate into your life. The author recommends a few key routines to keep the system running smoothly. The 2 most important happen at the beginning and end of every project. He provides a project kickoff checklist where you brainstorm and gather your existing notes, and a project completion checklist where you review what you've created and save any reusable intermediate packets for the future. He also recommends a weekly review to clear out your inboxes and organize your new notes, keeping the system from getting cluttered. Ultimately, this whole system is designed to facilitate a profound shift in your mindset. It's a shift from scarcity to abundance. Instead of feeling like you never have enough information, you start to realize that you are surrounded by an abundance of incredible ideas, and you have a system for capturing and using the best of them. It's a shift from being a passive consumer to an active creator. Instead of just letting information wash over you, you become the curator of your own knowledge and the architect of your own projects. And perhaps most importantly, it's a shift that allows you to fire your biological brain from the stressful, thankless job of trying to remember everything. You delegate that task to your trusted second brain, freeing up your mind to imagine, to wonder, to connect, and to create. You stop asking your brain to be a hard drive, and you let it become a CEO, directing the flow of information and turning it into a life of purpose and impact. Commentary. So, what do we take away from all this? When I first encountered the ideas in building a second brain, what struck me most was how it addresses a feeling that I think everyone, especially young people today, experiences so acutely: the feeling of being completely overwhelmed. We are told that knowledge is power, but we are drowning in it. This book offers not just a lifeboat, but a blueprint for building your own personal submarine, allowing you to navigate the depths of the information ocean with purpose and control. The most transformative idea for me is the principle of organizing for actionability with the para system. It's so simple, yet so profound. For years, I, like many people, tried to build the perfect digital library, with meticulously organized folders by topic. And for years, I failed. It was too much work, and I rarely ever went back to those folders. The moment you reframe the question from "where does this information belong?" to "where will I need this information next?" the entire game changes. It cuts through the complexity and connects your learning directly to your life's goals. It turns your notes from a passive archive into an active workshop. The second key lesson is the power of thinking small. The idea of intermediate packets is a beautiful antidote to the paralysis that so often comes with big, ambitious goals. We look at the mountain we want to climb and we freeze. This book teaches you to stop looking at the summit and instead focus on gathering the small, individual stones you'll use to build the first step of the path. Each note you save, each highlight you make, each small outline you create, these aren't just trivial acts. They are the building blocks of your future creations. It reframes productivity not as a series of heroic, all-night efforts, but as a slow, steady, and sustainable accumulation of small wins. And finally, This book is a powerful reminder that the ultimate purpose of learning is not to hoard knowledge, but to share it. The express step is the culmination of the entire process. It's a call to action to stop waiting until you're ready, and to start sharing what you know, right now, in small ways. To create that blog post, to share that interesting article with a friend, to start that side project. Because it's only in the act of creating and sharing that our knowledge comes alive, finds its purpose, and makes an impact on the world. This system isn't about becoming a productivity robot. It's about building a scaffold for your mind. It's about creating a structure that can support your curiosity, your ambitions, and your creativity, so that you can be happily unoptimized, free to roam, to wonder, and to focus on what truly makes you feel alive. That was a deep dive into Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. We've journeyed through the core ideas today, but believe me, a summary is like looking at a travel brochure. The real adventure begins when you visit the destination yourself. This book is filled with nuanced examples, practical tips, and a depth that can only be appreciated by reading it. If any of the concepts we discussed, organizing for action, progressive summarization, or turning your knowledge into creative work, sparked something in you, I highly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new system, it's about investing in a new way of thinking that can pay dividends for the rest of your life. The link to the book is waiting for you in the description below. Also, if you found this exploration valuable and it gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that we're on the right track, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.